and welcome to another lawnfawn video. Today we are so excited to be introducing our newest interactive die, Pull and Pop Pull Tab. This die is so cool, so let's check out what it does. As you pull the tab, the element on your card flies up into the air, and it is just so cool. As it flies up into the air, it does a little turn towards the recipient that makes it feel really extra special. This is so much fun to integrate into your scenes using stamped images. You can also use it with die cuts like we've used in this card too, and that is such a cool look and it packs a big punch. You can have the element high up on your card, down low. It can be portrait, landscape, slimline. There are so many cool things you can do with it, and you can even have larger things move like big panels, which gives it a totally different look, and we'll be showing you how to do this towards the end of the video. So we are so excited about this Pull and Pop Pull Tab, so let's check out how to put it together. And here is a look at all of the pieces in the Pull and Pop Pull Tab. This is our pull tab, of course. This piece here helps create the slots on your card, and then this piece is a stabilizer piece. The next two pieces are decorative, so this is a decorative cover for your pull tab and a notch creator, and we'll be showing you how to use all of these pieces, and we're going to do that by starting out with the one that's going to create slots. And as you can see here, there are two slots and then this little arrow. That arrow is a little guide to help you place it on your card, and you're going to want that arrow to always be pointing down or towards your body, however you like to think about it. I always like to think about it pointing down to the bottom of my card. So I've got my arrow there. I'm making sure that it's pointing down, and then I can take this piece and place it around my card, left, right, up and down, etc. In this case, for demonstration, we're just going to put it kind of in the center there, hold it in place with some low-tack tape. We're going to run that through the die cut machine, and you'll see that the die is going to create two slots on our card here, and those are perfect because we're going to be threading our pull tab through those slots. And here is that pull tab. You can see that the die creates some beautiful stitched lines there, and it also creates some score lines that we're going to be folding along. So you can see there's a score line right there, kind of in that T-shaped area, and then a score line above. Now that T-shaped area, we are going to be folding that toward ourselves. And I have a little trick to help you fold this delicate fold line. And this trick comes from Debbie here at Lawn Fawn Headquarters. So thank you so much, Debbie. I'm going to take a ruler and I'm going to line up that ruler with that score line. And then I'm just going to kind of fold up against the ruler. And the ruler does all of the work for you. You don't need to worry about it being like exactly folded or trying to be too delicate. You can just fold up right along that ruler and you'll see that the score line is perfect. And this is a fun tip I'm going to be using on a lot of different score lines for different die cuts that I have. So now that I have that folded against the ruler, what I like to do is take a bone folder and really secure that fold. So there you'll see I've kind of folded it in half, and I'm just going to take that bone folder and get a nice sharp crease. And we have folded this one towards ourselves. That means this one you're going to fold it away from yourself. So it's going to be kind of like a little Z. So we're going to fold that one away from ourselves, and once again use a bone folder to score that. Now, you don't necessarily need to do that ruler trick. You could just fold it on your own, but for someone like me that likes to be very careful, I love using my ruler that I always have right in my drawer next to me. This is the slot piece that we cut earlier, and we are going to flip it over, and we're going to be working from the back of this card. And I'm just going to take a pen here and write back just to help us kind of understand what we're looking at. So now that we're looking at the back of this, we also want to be looking at the back of the pull tab. And that's pretty easy to tell because the stitching on the back doesn't look quite as pretty as the stitching on the front. What you're going to do is you're going to take the stitched area and you're going to feed it through the bottom slot. And then you're going to take the top area and feed it through the top slot. Once you get to that little mini T shape there, you're just going to feed those right in through the slot, just like that. And that's it. It's super, super easy. So I'm going to repeat that again. We're going to look at the back of this piece. So there's the pretty stitching there. I know I'm at the back because the stitching's not quite as pretty. We're going to feed the stitched area through the bottom slot, just like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the top area and we're going to feed it through the top slot. Then once you get to that kind of smaller T area there, you're going to feed those little notches there right through the slot, just like that. And that's it. You have already started to create the mechanism for the Pull and Pop Pull Tab. And you can already kind of see what the motion is going to look like, but the next thing that we need is our stabilizer piece. So here you can see the die for that, and it creates two little score lines for you there at the top and the bottom, and we're going to fold this in a Z fold as well. So I'm going to take the top one and fold it away from myself, and then I'm going to take the bottom score line there and I'm going to fold that towards myself, creating a little Z there for my stabilizer piece. Our next step is to make sure that the top of the tab there is flush with the top of the slot. So I'm just going to push that up towards there, and it'll kind of butt up against it and be nice and flat against that edge. Then we're going to take this little Z-shaped piece, and you want to see that little square there when you put it on there. So not like this. See, I can't see the square there against the tab. I want it to be just like this, where I can see that little square right there against the tab. So now that we know the position that we need it in, we know where our adhesive needs to go. So we're going to add some adhesive to that little square that's going to attach down onto the card base. Once I add my tape runner, I can take this little piece and we are going to put it right in the center there. You can kind of just eyeball it. Once again, we're making sure that piece is nice and flush. We'll put it in the center, and I'm going to leave the teeniest little gap between the pull tab and that little square. So you can see that little gap of cardstock right there. That's exactly what you want to have, just a little tiny sliver. It doesn't need to be perfect, but just a little bit of extra space right there. Then our next step is going to be to attach the last part of the stabilizer piece. So once again, we're going to make sure that piece is nice and flush to the top of the slot. You're going to fold that stabilizer piece over, and then you're going to fold the piece of the pull tab over just like that. So I'll repeat that again. You're going to fold that piece down, and then that piece is going to fold back. So I'm going to add a little bit of highlighter so you can see where I'm putting my adhesive. The adhesive is only going to go on that little square that we folded. So it's going above that score line. Once we have our adhesive on there, once again, we can have this piece lay nice and flat. And then all we need to do is just fold that pull tab piece back, and it's going to attach. And now we're going to have our stabilizer that's going to help the movement of this piece work a lot better. We made the pull tab extra long so that you can come up with all sorts of different designs on your cards. So you may have to trim off some of it depending on your design. So in this case, we need to trim off a little bit. So we're going to take the pull tab and we're going to push it all the way in so that everything is nice and flat. And then all you need to do is just take a pair of scissors and you can trim off any of the excess. And this makes it easily customizable. That way you can move your pull tab down, up, left, or right on your card, and you'll have the perfect size pull tab. Now, of course, I always like to have a little arrow to tell the recipient what to do, and that's what this decorative piece is. So this is going to be a decorative cover for your pull tab. Now we also made this piece extra long so that you can once again customize your pull tab. So to decide what length you need for this, you're going to pull your pull tab out all the way. You're going to line up the pieces kind of next to each other like that so they're running in parallel. And then you'll see the area where there's blue, right? The area between the two slots. You're just going to kind of pick a halfway point. You can just eyeball it, make a little mark, and then just trim that right off. And that's going to be your perfect length. Super easy to do, no measuring that you have to do at all, just kind of eyeball it, make a mark, trim it off. Then you can flip it over and add your adhesive. Then you'll feed it through that bottom slot and then line it up with the bottom part of your pull tab. And this is fun because you can add a decoration by changing it with pattern paper or an inked piece. And then it also has that great little arrow too. The other thing it does is it adds some stability to the pull tab because now we've layered two pieces of paper on top of each other. So I love that it's decorative and functional, which is really awesome. Now it's time to add this piece to your card base. So we are going to flip it over and we're going to add adhesive in a really particular place. So I'm going to be using a highlighter here to demonstrate. And what you're going to do is kind of create like two U-shaped places here where you're going to add your adhesive. And the reason for this is you don't want any adhesive towards the left or right of that pull tab area that you can see there. And that's because the paper needs to move up and down as your pull tab moves. So by not putting any adhesive there, it's going to give that pull tab the opportunity to move. So you're going to create kind of like these two U's. And there you can see it with the highlighter. And now I'm going to go in with my tape runner. And so we're going to add our tape runner here to the bottom and then now towards the top. And then we can add that onto the card base. And that is plenty of adhesive to keep everything stable, but also not too much adhesive so that your pull tab is going to move really well. And now you can see the pull tab in action. By adding it to a card base and also adding that decorative tab cover piece, we've added a ton of stability, and now the action on the pull tab is so cool. Now that our mechanism is working, we're going to work on incorporating this into your card. So in this case, I want to cover up that slot and part of the pull tab. So I've just taken a piece of craft cardstock here, and I'm just going to kind of line it up on my card and see what height I need to cover up that bottom slot. I'm just making a little mark with my pen here, and then I can take my paper trimmer and then just trim this down. And as you can see, this piece is going to cover up that bottom slot and part of the pull tab, integrating it more into my design. Now, this die comes with this really great decorative notch creator. And so the easiest way to use this is just to shift your bottom piece up a little bit so that you can see the tab. Then you'll see that there's those two little kind of triangle pieces there at the bottom. You're going to line up those triangle pieces with the pull tab. So no measuring is needed. You can just line those right up, just like that. And then those two kind of T-shaped bars that are sticking out, those are going to butt up right up against the edge of your cardstock. So what I love about this is, in this case, our notch is in the center, so it would have been easy to just center it, but you may have your notch off to the side, and this is going to help you line it up without measuring or doing anything at all. You're going to hold that in place with low-tack tape and run it through your die cut machine, and now your notch is perfectly lined up to where you put your tab on your card. And doesn't that look amazing? I just love how this integrates it into the card. Now, we had to add our adhesive in kind of those U-shaped things. We're going to do that again for this piece. Once again, because we don't want to get in the way of the movement of this awesome pull tab. So we're going to create two little U's there right on the side. And you can go in a little bit more towards that bottom notch piece. That's going to help give it some nice stability. But up towards the top, I would just do a little bit of a U there. That way, you're going to have a lot of free movement for your interactive piece. And if for some reason you ever added too much or too little adhesive, you could just pop that piece off and just add a little more or a little less tape runner, and it's going to work great. So now we can add this right on top, and we've got that beautiful little notched area and then that tab piece. And now you can see the piece moving. Oh, it looks so cool. And then some of the mechanism has been hidden and kind of integrated into the card design. Now, when you're going to add an element to it, where you're going to add your adhesive is to that folded piece there. It's kind of like a rectangle there. I added some highlighters so you can see where I'm putting the adhesive. We're going to layer that on, and in this case, I just have a plain stitch circle that we're going to add onto the card, but of course you would have a stamped in die cut image or a die cut or a panel or something really cool. You can move this piece all along depending on exactly where you want it on your card. This die is really forgiving like that. And then you can just adhere that down, and that's it. Now you have a working mechanism that's been integrated into your card design. And not only does it kind of fly up into the air, but it also rotates towards the recipient. And that's what feels so cool when you get one of these in person, because it's just such a fun movement. And it's such a cool and fun surprise. And I love that you can take the idea of this interactive die and integrate it into card designs that you were already making, because you could have a cute little hot air balloon flying up, or a sentiment, or a rainbow, or all sorts of different things. And here's a little side shot so that you can really see the whole thing in action. You can see how that stabilizer is working. It's just so cool. And now it is time to actually start creating some cards with this. So we're going to start off with some of our stripes and sprinkles paper. This is so pretty and so wonderful for your sky. And we're going to use the largest of the small stitch rectangles and die cut a rectangle. Then we're going to take out the pull and pop pull tab, and we're going to be working with that slot creator first. Now, there's a fun trick to deciding where the elements are going to go on your card, and we're going to be showing you that now. And this right here is the brand new Fly High stamp set, which also has these cute little critters that you can put inside the balloons. So of course I had to add this cute little elephant there, and so we're going to add him into the hot air balloon. And then we're going to start working with that slot creator. So once again, like we did earlier, we're going to make sure that our arrow is pointing down, and there's those two little holes along the bottom. Well, that's a really good guide as to where your element is going to end up on your card, where it's nice and flat. So for example, if you had an elephant, you could have his feet would be lining up with the bottom slot. In this case, I had kind of the base of the hot air balloon lining up with those two little dots there, which is the bottom slot of the card. And that really helped me line it up. Then I'm just putting this in the center and holding it down with some low-tack tape. This die is pretty forgiving when you add your character onto it, so you don't have to worry too much about your exact placement, but this is going to help you know, did I want my hot air balloon really high up on my card or really low on my card? So now we're taking the pull tab piece and we're going to die cut that out of the same pattern paper so that everything kind of blends in together. Now we've got those score lines that the die creates for us, and I'm going to do the ruler trick again. And honestly, this makes it so easy. And you could use any kind of flat edge. The ruler works really well, but anything that you could find on your desk to kind of fold up against. And I'm just going to line that up with that score line and fold right up against the ruler. And then I can take out my bone folder to help crease that really well. Now we folded that longer score line towards ourselves. The shorter one, you're going to fold it away from yourself. So we're just going to fold that down and then crease it with the bone folder. Then we're going to take that main piece that has the slots and we're going to flip it over, and we're also going to flip over our tab piece. And what's nice is these are the same pattern paper, so we're looking at the back that has the stripes. And we're going to feed that through the bottom slot and then feed that top area through the top slot. And when we get to that smaller T-shaped area, we're just going to feed those through just like that, and that's exactly how you do it. So I'm just going to repeat that so that you can see it one more time. The longer piece will go through the bottom slot, and kind of that shorter top area is going to go through the top slot. And then when you get to that T-shaped area, you're just going to feed those smaller notches right through the top slot so that those are onto the front of the card. The next step is to die cut our stabilizer piece, and I recommend that when you do the stabilizer piece that you do it out of cardstock instead of pattern paper. It's just a little bit thicker and it's going to make the whole card a little bit more stable. Now this piece, once again, it's going to create those two score lines, so we're going to fold along those score lines in a Z shape. So you're going to take one of them and you're going to fold away from yourself, and then the other one you're going to fold it towards yourself. And then we'll make those folds nice and sharp with a bone folder. Then the next step is to take that piece, and remember we're going to put it flush with the top. So we're going to push it up towards the top and make sure those two edges are flush against each other. And then we can add this piece on. So we're going to add some tape runner to the back of that little square, and we're going to make sure we're seeing that square. We're going to put that in the center there with just the tiniest little gap between that stabilizer piece and the slot. Just like that. Then we're going to fold this piece down, and eventually that piece is going to fold over like that. And so now we know where we need to add our adhesive. It's right to that little square there above that score line. Once we have adhesive on there, then we can fold up that tab piece, and it's going to attach the whole thing together. So now you may think, well, I have this cardstock piece that doesn't match the rest of my card, right? Right there. So there's a really quick and easy way to cover that up. And that way you can use cardstock for stability, but still have the look of your pretty pattern paper. So we're going to die cut that stabilizer piece again, and I'm going to just trim it down. So I like to fold along the score lines that that die has created for me. And then I'm just going to take my scissors and trim off the little squares above the folds. That's going to give me a piece that I can layer over top for decoration, but I'm still going to maintain the stability of having that thicker cardstock as the stabilizer piece. So now this is really easy. All you need to do is just flip it over and add some tape runner to it, and then you can just line it right up. Because we use the same die to cut it, it's going to line up perfectly and it's going to look great. And then you can already see that mechanism working. So the next thing I'm going to do is use that same largest of the small stitch rectangles. I'm going to die cut a piece of white cardstock, and we're going to be creating some clouds since we've got our hot air balloon to be kind of like our ground in quotes, because it's really the sky, right? But I'm going to use my Puffy cloud borders for this, which I just love this die so much. And I'm going to make sure that I line this up so that it is covering up that bottom slot. And you'll see that I just like to line the two up against each other and just kind of eyeball it. And that's one of the things, once again, I love about this die is that like you don't have to be exact. You can kind of have some imperfections and it's still going to work great. So now I have that die cut piece there, and you'll see that it's going to line up over it perfectly. But before I do that, I'm going to do some stamping. And I was very proud of myself for remembering to stamp my sentiment, because I always forget that, and then I put the whole card together, and then it's very nerve-wracking to stamp on it. So here I'm going to take one of the sentiments from the new Fly High stamp set, and it says, "I'm here to lift you up," which I think is the perfect sentiment for this interactive card. And so I'm going to just stamp that right in there in some black licorice ink. And now we can start to work on putting the rest of this together. So we're going to flip this piece over and we're going to be adding our tape runner. And remember, this is where we're going to do kind of like our little U shape on either side. That way the adhesive doesn't get in the way of the mechanism at all, but it's still going to be nice and secure. And as we layer this over the top, you can see that it's already helping to integrate the mechanism into our card design. Then next I need to put this on a base. So I went ahead and just trimmed down a piece of white cardstock to be the same exact size as this rectangle. And now we're going to flip it over and do our U-shaped adhesive again. So we can do our strips along the top and bottom, and then those just tiny little bits that are going to go up towards the center. That way our mechanism is going to have plenty of area to move freely onto the card. And once you add this onto the base, it's what really gives it the stability, and you'll feel the mechanism working really, really great once you do that. Then next we're going to work on the card base. So we're going to take out a standard size card base that's going to be 5.5 by 4.25, and then some really rainbow paper, which is really pretty paper, and I think it looks so nice with the new stripes and sprinkles. So we're going to add some tape runner onto that and then layer that onto the card base. And then we're going to add this whole mechanism piece with some foam squares. I mean, this is a really fun way to add that and just kind of get some extra height onto your card. And because we put it onto its own panel, we're able to do this instead of just adhering it straight onto the card base. So we're going to add our foam squares to the back of that. And then we can peel up that liner paper, and then we're going to layer that onto the card. And I just love the look of that little pop against the rainbow. Next, I'm taking out some images from the Fly High stamp set, and we're going to work on adding that hot air balloon to our mechanism. So I'm going to add some tape runner there to that rectangle that's kind of above that score line, and then we're going to add our hot air balloon on there. You'll see I'm kind of moving him around to see exactly where he's going to look nice on the card. Once again, that's one thing I love about this die is you can kind of move it around and see what the perfect placement is going to be for your design. And then I'm going to add some elements that are going to be in the background. So I'm just adding those with some tape runner so they kind of feel like they're really far away, and then this one hot air balloon is kind of lifting high up into the sky. And oh my goodness, how fun is this already? Oh, I love it so much. And you may be noticing that our tab is extra long, so we do have to trim it off. So when you go to trim it off, you want to make sure that it's pushed up all the way in and that your image is nice and flat on your card. And then you can just take a pair of scissors and trim it up against the edge of your card, just like that. Now here I made a little mistake, and I wanted to show you this mistake, show you how easy it is to fix something. I kind of wanted to add this decorative pull tab onto my card. So I'm die cutting some more of that stripes and sprinkles paper in this really pretty pink color because I want that tab to really stick out. But I realized that I should have added this piece before I added these clouds at the bottom, but that's totally okay. So the good thing is you can just pop this right off. It's just tape runner. I definitely recommend tape runner so that you can fix your mistakes like I'm doing now. And now I can use my cool little decorative cover. So again, I'm going to pull my tab out all the way, and then I'm going to line up the decorative cover with it, and then just make kind of a general kind of in the middle between the two slots mark there. Once again, doesn't have to be perfect. And then I can just trim that piece off. Once we have that trimmed down to the perfect size for this card design, we can flip that over and add some tape runner to it. And then we're going to feed it in through that bottom slot until it lines up with the bottom part of the tab. Then once that's all lined up, you can press down to secure it. And I always like to make sure at this point that everything's working well. And once it's working well, I can now add my clouds back on. So obviously, if I had thought about the design earlier, I would have done this before I added my clouds. But the nice part about this is it was really easy to remove those clouds and change the color and design of my little tab. So I love that you can kind of do that. So we're going to add those clouds back on. And how fun is it to have that bright pink tab at the bottom and that cute little arrow? Now, as I was looking at this, I really wanted the arrow to pop more. So I decided to just do a little bit of an inlay technique. So I'm going to die cut the same little decorative tab there out of white cardstock. And then I'm going to use the little arrow that kind of comes out of the tab, and we're just going to drop that right in. So I can add just a little bit of glue and then drop that arrow in. And the nice part about this is it's another way to kind of customize it and add a fun color onto your card. And now this card design is all done. This was so much fun to create. And then, oh my goodness, when you pull the tab, it is just such a fun surprise. I love with a very minimal tab movement, you get such a big movement up into the sky. And then I love that it rotates towards the recipient. It makes it feel so special and so cool. And this card would just make someone smile. Now that we've added a stamped image to our Pull and Pop pull tab, let's go ahead and add a die cut image. But first up, we're going to start off with some inking, and we are recreating a card by Callie today, so thank you so much, Callie, for creating such a gorgeous card. And we're going to be creating this really pretty sunset here with picked raspberry, worn lipstick, and then squeezed lemonade. I'm bringing a darker pink from the top and then the medium pink, and as I bring the yellow over the pink, it creates kind of like a cool orange that is just beautiful and looks so much like a gorgeous sunset. Then next, I've taken out my pull tab piece and I'm going to ink onto this piece as well. So in the first card, we used pattern paper. You could use colored cardstock as well, but you can also ink over this and I think it looks so pretty. And you can see that as I ink it, I kind of compare it to the card and see if it's kind of matching the look. And I went ahead and inked both the front and the back because some of it will be visible and I wanted to make sure that it would all really match on the card. And so adding ink to your pull tab is a really, really cool way to use it as well. I'm also going to take out the stabilizer piece and add some ink to that too. The nice thing about this is it'll be cut out of cardstock, which is great for the stabilizer piece, but we're going to be able to have it match our scene by adding this really pretty sunset with our pinks and yellows. And I'm also going to ink both the front and back of this just to make sure that it looks nice and clean on my card and everything is just going to kind of blend together. And then here you can see all three of our pieces done and you can see how beautifully they coordinate together. I'm going to put those aside to dry and I'm going to work on my rainbow, which this die cut rainbow is what's going to be moving on my card. And so this is the Stitch Rainbow dies and it has this great base and I love how all of the arcs of the rainbow are separate so that you can really choose and customize your colors. And here I have guava, apricot, mermaid, ballet slippers, and sticky note cardstock. So we're going to cut our little rainbow arcs here and we're going to be layering those on to the base. And I'm going to add some liquid glue with the glue tube to the back of each of these pieces and then layer them on. I always like to start with the top rainbow arch and then I layer each of the next ones on there. And there's something about creating a rainbow that just always makes me smile. The Stitch Rainbow die comes with these cute little clouds that you can put at the end of the rainbow. And eventually I want to put those at the end of the rainbow, but I'm not sure of their exact placement until we kind of put our whole mechanism together. So I'm just going to keep them separate for now, but still use them as a guide for how we're going to place the Pull and Pop pull tab onto this card. So here is that little slot creator and we're going to play around with this one and this one's going to be up a lot higher than we did our previous one. So fun to kind of see how you can mix and match it. And I'm going to be using those two little dots there at the bottom as my guide as to where my rainbow is going to end up. So I know that that's kind of going to be the base. So you'll see I'm kind of trying to line up the base of the rainbow with those two little circles, which are where the bottom slot is. So we're just going to kind of play around with it. You'll see I'm just kind of taking a look, seeing what I like. Once I have a placement that I think is looking good, I'm going to hold that in place with some low tack tape and run it through the die cut machine. And now we're going to have the two slots that we're going to need to put together our Pull and Pop pull tab. Then just like the previous card, we're going to fold along the score lines that the die created for us. I'm using my ruler there as just kind of like a little guide to fold up against. We're going to make sure that we fold towards ourselves and that T-shaped area. And then on the fold at the top, we're going to fold away from ourselves. And I always like to use a bone folder to make sure that I have a nice sharp crease there. And then just like we talked about, we're going to fold that top piece away from ourselves so that it's going to look like a Z and we're just going to secure that fold as well. Then we're going to take this piece and flip it over and take the pull tab and flip that over. And we're going to feed the longer part through the bottom slot and the shorter part is going to go up through the top slot. Once we get to that kind of like shorter T there, we're going to take those notches and we're going to feed those through to the front of the card. And I'm just going to show you that same thing one more time. So we're going to feed the longer part through the bottom slot and the shorter part is going to go up through the top slot. And here I'm just going to get you a close up so you can see when we get to that kind of shorter T area how I feed those through. I always feed one through and then I feed the other one through. And that's going to get your pull and pop mechanism in perfect placement just like that. Next, we need to work on the stabilizer piece. So we're going to fold along those score lines with a Z fold as well. So one of those is going to go away from ourselves and we're going to just secure that with a bone folder. And then the other one, you're going to fold it towards yourself and also just crease that with a bone folder. Then I always like to see how this is going to end up on my card. So I want to make sure I'm looking at that little square. So not that way, but this way, just like that. And you'll see how it's going to kind of adhere. Once I know how it's going to adhere, then I bring it over here and I can add my tape runner. So I'm going to fold that little square back and add some adhesive above that fold line. And then we can attach that down. And so we're going to make sure that this piece is flush against the top. So we're going to push that part up. And then we can attach that stabilizer piece, once again leaving that little sliver of space between the stabilizer piece and that top slot. Then we can push that down. You'll see how that's going to attach. Then we can add our tape runner above that fold line there onto that little square. And then once we've got the adhesive on there, we can fold back on that tab, securing it all in place. Next, we're going to start working on covering up that bottom slot. And this time we're going to actually use the puffy cloud borders again because they're going to look so cute with the rainbow. So here I have some white cardstock that's cut to the same width as my panel. And then we're going to go ahead and take one of those puffy cloud border dies. And this is how I kind of like to do it. I like to kind of eyeball it and see how it's going to look. So I'm just kind of playing with it just to see. I'm going to put the rainbow there, etc. And once we have a good placement for that, we can run it through the die cut machine. And now we'll have this beautiful puffy cloud border that you see that's going to cover up that bottom slot. Now this piece was a bit long, so all I need to do is make a little tick mark there at the bottom of this panel and then just trim off any of the excess, and now we're going to have the perfect sized cloud. Then next we're going to add our rainbow, and I'm just going to add a little bit of tape runner to the back of the rainbow in the center where it's going to attach. And this is kind of a fun way to use the pull tab in that you're seeing some of that mechanism, and that's totally okay. We inked it to match the scene and it's going to look absolutely beautiful. So I kind of took a look to see how it was looking as it moved, and now we can add those stitch clouds on there. And as I add those stitch clouds on there, I want some of them to attach onto that pull tab just to add a little bit of stability. So I'm kind of just eyeballing it and moving it. I like that one cloud is higher than the other. I think that just looks super cute. And now you can see that the movement of it is amazing. It really looks like that rainbow is just flying so high up into the air. Now it's time to stamp the sentiment. And I wanted to make sure the stamp sentiment was showing if the rainbow was down or if the rainbow was up. So that's why I'm kind of creating it here with the rainbow already attached onto the card. And this was a bit nerve-wracking, so I took out some Post-its to cover up the top part of my card just to make sure I didn't accidentally get any black ink on there. So that's why I added those Post-its on there. And now I can stamp the sentiment, which comes from the Here For You Bear stamp set. It says, "When it rains, look for rainbows." So cute and sweet, and such a perfect sentiment for this card. Now that we have our clouds, I wanted to add some grass, and this is the brand new What's Sewing On paper, and there is this paper in this that is the perfect grass. It's meant to look like little stitches, but it also kind of looks like a little grass line. So we're going to be using this pattern paper here along with this grassy border die. And so I'm going to go ahead and die cut that grass and trim it down to be the same width as my panel. And I wasn't sure the exact height of my grass, so I just actually laid it on to my cloud piece, and then I'm just going to make a little mark at the bottom of the cloud piece, and then we can just trim off the bottom of that. And that's really nice because it was just kind of, where does it look nice? Make a little tick mark and trim it off, and everything's going to look great together. Now, for this card, we're going to use the notch. In the hot air balloon, we actually didn't use the notch because the tab was kind of sticking out at the bottom of the panel, and that works really great. So I love that you can use the notch or not, but in this case, we're going to use the notch. So we're going to line up those little arrows that are pointing down with the width of the tab, just like that, and then the T-shaped pieces that are sticking out on either end are going to butt up to the edge of the cardstock. And those little arrows make it so that you don't need to do any measuring or anything. It makes it so nice and easy. We can run it through the die cut machine, and now we're going to have that beautiful stitch detail just like that. I also want the tab to kind of blend into that grass. So I'm going to die cut this decorative piece out of that same pattern paper. And then we're going to work on putting this whole thing on to our card base so we can decide what the length of our tab is actually going to be. So here we're going to take out a standard size card base that's going to be 5.5 by 4.25. And we're going to add our panel directly onto the card base this time. In the hot air balloon card, we added it onto its own panel and then we use foam squares. In this case, we're going to add it straight onto the card base. You can do it either way. It's just kind of a personal preference or how you want your card to look. Then once you have your adhesive on, you can just layer that right on to the card base, just like that. And now we're going to have a nice working mechanism, and we can start doing some of our decorating. To trim off the tab, I'm going to make sure that the tab is pushed all the way in and my element is nice and flat on the card. So you see I'm going to push it all the way in, make sure my rainbow is nice and flat, and then I can take my scissors and trim off. And you'll see that this time we are trimming off a lot less of the pull tab because we have our image much higher up on the card. And that's what that extra length of tab lets you do. The other cool thing about this one is the decorative pull tab, you don't have to trim it at all. It's actually the perfect size because this is just about as high up as you can put one of these mechanisms onto a card. So we're going to add some tape runner to this, and then we can feed it through that bottom slot and then line it up with the bottom of the tab. And now our tab is going to blend into our grass. And whenever I add the decorative tab piece, I always want to make sure it's still working. And look how cool this is. Oh my gosh, it's so fun. All right, so now we can start our decorating. So we're going to layer our grass onto our clouds, and then we can layer this whole piece onto the card base. And once again, we're going to do our little U-shaped adhesive to make sure that our tab can move nice and freely. So we're going to add some tape runner there along the bottom, in towards the notch, and on the sides, and just a little bit in at the top. And then we can layer this piece on, and we're just going to line it up with that bottom panel, but not with the bottom of the card base. So what I like about this design is that the tab is kind of sticking out further than the bottom of the grass. I just think it looks really cool. I think it's such a fun look, and here you can see kind of this whole thing in action. So fun and so cool. Now we need to add some more decorations. So here we have our Berry Rainy Day stamp set, and we're also going to take out Here For You Bear, and these two sets are such a perfect match. I'm going to add some foam squares to the back of these images, so just so that they have some nice pop. But for the rain puddles, we're going to add those on with some tape runner. So I'm going to add my little water puddle there, and then we're going to layer this guy with the umbrella, which just makes the whole thing, especially with that sweet sentiment. Then we're going to add the other little bear there with some splashes, and then there's these cute little frogs that are in the Berry Rainy Day stamp set, and I really love that pop of green with the little frog jumping. It goes with the idea of this whole movement of this pull and pop pull tab too. And now this card is all done and we can see it in action. And as you pull the tab, you get that amazing surprise of the rainbow popping up into the sky. When you put the mechanism up towards the top of the card, it really packs a big punch. That rainbow really looks like it's just about to fly off the card. And I think it looks so cool. And here's a fun comparison between the first card and the second card. One uses a stamped element, one uses a die cut element, one's lower on the card, one's higher on the card. And the one with the hot air balloon, we did not use that little decorative notch. So you can do it either way, depending on the design of your card. It's really cute with the notch, or you can have that tab kind of peeking out from below of your panel, and each way is going to look amazing. And now we're going to use this die in a little bit of a different way. We're going to have a whole panel move, and it is so cool. But first up, we have to create that panel. So we've die cut the largest of the small stitch rectangles, and we're going to be using this brand new stencil, which is the Corner Rainbow Stencil. And this stencil is so much fun to use. And we're going to be taking out all the inks. These are all the inks that we're going to be using. To do something like this, you can shop your stash and just find your pretty colors of ink. We were inspired by a card by Callie to use these inks on our rainbows, and I just thought they were so unique and pretty. And we're going to start off by using raspberry. And so I'm going to be using some Post-it notes here just to block off the rest of my stencil. I am not that careful of a stenciler, so I like to use Post-it notes to make sure that I don't get any color of ink where I don't want it to go. So here I'm just tapping into my ink pad and then just adding some of that color to the rainbow. And then I can go ahead and lift off those Post-its, and I can now move my Post-its around. So I'm going to block off that bottom arc of the rainbow and the top, and we're going to work on the middle one. And I'm going to ink this up with some Ballet Slippers ink. Then once this one's all inked up, we can move the Post-its around again, blocking off the other arcs and just taking a look at that outside one. And for this one, we're going to use some Squeeze Lemonade. And now we have the big reveal, which is my favorite. And look how beautiful that is. It looks amazing just like this, but this does have a second stencil that helps you fill in the other arcs. And this stencil is actually designed to make it really easy to do this so that you don't have any gaps between your arcs. It has just a little bit of extra space. You might be able to see it there where you can see a little bit of the pink of that arc peeking out. That means the colors are going to overlap in a really pretty way, and you'll never have a little white line gap in between your rainbow arcs, which I think is so cool. For this part of the rainbow, I'm using some bubblegum ink, and once again, I've got all of my Post-its around. If you were a careful stenciler, you wouldn't need the Post-its, but I'm definitely not a careful stenciler, so I need these Post-its. And now we're going to do some apricot ink. And now for the big reveal, which I always feel like it's a big reveal with a two-part stencil. Look how gorgeous that is. Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. And now we're going to go ahead and add another rainbow into the corner. And for both of these, we're using the smaller rainbow. This stencil has two different size rainbows depending on what look you're going for. In this case, we're going to use the smaller one, the same one on this other side of the card. And we're going to be using Post-its again and doing more inking. We're starting off with some grape soda ink, and then we're going to once again block off with our Post-its, and we're going to be using some merman ink for this middle arc. And then for the outside arc, we're going to be using some celery stick. And then, of course, we're going to have our big reveal, and you'll see just how amazing this is looking. And then we're going to take out the second stencil from the set so that we can fill in the other arcs of the rainbow. And for these ones, we're going to be using some grape jelly ink and also forget-me-not. And then we'll have our last big reveal, and you can see how amazing these two rainbows look. I just think it looks so cool and so pretty, and I love this color combo. So thank you so much, Callie, for sharing it with us. So next up, we're going to add a nice bold sentiment for this. So we have the giant happy birthday to you. We're going to die cut it out of some black sparkle cardstock and then also out of some shimmer cardstock. And we're going to layer these two together. And by adding that kind of sparkly black shadow, it's going to help this sentiment pop from kind of a bit of a busy background. So we're going to add some liquid glue with the glue tube, and then we're going to layer it over the letters, and we're just going to shift it over to the left a little bit so that you get a little bit of a shadow. And you'll see once we add it to the card what an amazing pop that gives it, and that little sparkle feels really special. Now, I wanted to make sure that the sentiment also had a little bit of pop so it wouldn't get lost in the background. So to give it some height, we're going to layer some black cardstock here. We've die cut two of those. We're going to layer those, and then we're going to layer the sentiment on top of that. And that's going to give it some height. You could also use some foam strips behind it too, but sometimes I find that this is a bit quicker. And then we're going to add just some tape runner to the back of that, and we're going to layer that on to the panel. And this is going to be the panel that's going to move on the card. And so this is just so fun and bright and bold, and it just makes me happy. So here we have our stripes and sprinkles paper, and we're going to die cut that with a standard size rectangle there. That's the 5.5 by 5.25, the largest of the large 6 rectangles. And we're going to die cut that really fun turquoisey paper. And so this is going to be layered on top. And that right there would be such a cute card. But we are going to add the pull and pop to this to give it a really, really cool surprise. So when you're doing a big panel that's going to move, you're just going to take the piece that creates the slots and you're going to put that just right in the center of your piece. That's it. Really nice and easy. And we're going to center that, and you'll see that we've got the arrow pointing down, of course, and now we have the 2 slots in our card. Then we're going to die cut the pull tab, and we're going to die cut this out of some white cardstock because that's going to kind of help it blend in to the white panel that we have going on at the top. We're going to use our ruler to fold again, so it's going to help us fold that score line. Then we can secure that with a bone folder. We're folding that towards ourselves, and then the top tab we're going to fold away for ourselves, and we're going to crease that with the bone folder too. Now that the tab is folded, we can add it to the base. So we're going to go ahead and flip the piece with the slots over, and we're also going to flip the tab over. We're going to take the longer part and feed it through the bottom slot, and the shorter part's going to feed through the top slot, and we're going to kind of fit those little notches through just like we've done on all of the other cards. And now our tab is in perfect placement, and we need to start working on our stabilizer. So I've die cut this out of some white cardstock, and we're going to fold along those score lines. So we're going to fold towards ourselves on one of them and away from ourselves on the other, creating a Z-shaped fold. We'll add some adhesive like we've done before, and then we're going to take this piece, making sure we see the square, and we're going to attach that right above that top slot, making sure that we see that little sliver of paper kind of peeking through the slot. Then we're going to make sure that our tab is flush with the top pushed all the way in. We're going to fold our stabilizer there, and we're going to add some tape runner right there to that square, and then we can fold the back of the tab, attaching those all together. And now we're going to have a working mechanism. Next, we're going to work on covering up that bottom slot. So I'm going to take a stitched rectangle that's the same size as that fun little sprinkle dotted paper, and we're going to be cutting some grass. And this is some Watercolor Wishes paper, and I love that the stripes and sprinkles go so well with the Watercolor Wishes. So I have a grass border here, and I just went ahead and eyeballed that and lined it up so that that grass would cover up the slot. And I'm actually going to add another layer of grass, and I'm going to do that by just using the bottom part of my paper. I already have the stitched rectangle cut, so I might as well use the bottom part. And this grass, I'm going to make it a lot shorter so that we can kind of layer it and have this dual layer of grass for extra texture. Then we can layer these two grass pieces together, and we're going to work on creating a notch. So we're going to use that little notch creator die that's included in the set. We're going to line up those little arrows with the tab so that it's going to be in perfect placement, and we're going to butt up those T-shaped pieces sticking out on either side with the edge of our paper. Then we're going to hold it in place with some low tack tape and run it through the die cut machine, and that'll be able to cut through both pieces of the pattern paper, and you're going to have this beautiful stitched notch opening for your tab. Now, I wanted to decorate this tab to have it match the grass. And look at that, we had enough paper in that one rectangle to get that same Watercolor Wishes paper on the tab. So I went ahead and die cut that. We're now going to push our tab all the way in, making sure the whole thing is flat, and then we're going to trim off the excess of that tab. Then, like we've done before, we're going to take our decorative piece, we're going to pull the tab out all the way, we're going to line those two pieces up, and then we're just going to make a little tick mark in between the two slots, and then we'll trim off any of the excess. We can then flip it over and add some adhesive, and then we're just going to feed it into that bottom slot until it lines up with the bottom part of the tab. Then we'll flip the grass over, and we're going to add those U-shaped adhesives, right? So we're going to add some there along the bottom, on the side, and a little bit in at the top. I like to go a little bit closer to the notch at the bottom because that makes it nice and secure as you pull the pull tab. And then you'll see how beautifully this is going to line up with that stitch detail going all the way around the whole panel and also up into that notch, which looks so cool. Then we're going to take a standard size card base, 5.5 by 4.25. We're going to flip this piece over and do those U-shaped adhesives again. So we're going to do a long piece along the top and then just a little short one down each of the sides. That way our mechanism is going to be able to move freely. So we'll add some tape runner there also in that U shape along the bottom. And then we can take this whole thing and layer it onto the card base. Now it's time to add the panel. So we're going to add some adhesive above that fold onto the pull tab. I'm going to make sure to cover the whole thing because this is a big panel here. And then we're going to layer that panel right on top, and that's going to adhere on to the mechanism. And then, wow, this is my favorite part. So we're going to pull the pull tab and check it out. Oh my gosh, it's so cool. It's such a big surprise. Like, even though I made it, I don't even imagine that it's going to happen because it just looks like a standard card. And then it's just this huge, big surprise. And it almost kind of looks like an easel. And it reveals the perfect place to add a sentiment, a message, or a cute scene. So here we have the Elephant Parade stamp set and the Elephant Parade add-on. And we're going to add our little characters. We're going to add it all with tape runner because, of course, we want it nice and flat so that it's hidden behind the big panel. And we're going to make like a little elephant birthday parade, which I think is a really sweet little surprise scene below. So we're going to add these two guys, and here you can see I'm making sure that they're still covered up because I want it to be a surprise. I don't want any of the elements peeking out from behind the panel. I'm going to add a little crown and this cute little cupcake that has a peanut in the top. And then we're going to add some balloon strings here, and they're going to be kind of coming out from the little elephant's tail. And then we're going to layer those two little balloons. And they kind of bring in some of the colors that we added to the rainbows there on the main panel. So I like that it all kind of coordinates. And now this card is all done. So we're going to push the tab in, and that's going to put the panel back into position. So it just looks like a standard card, super, super cute. And when you pull that tab, look at the big surprise. Oh my gosh, I just love it. This is so cute, so much fun. You could even hide like a little gift card under there. That would be a fun surprise, or even money if you were giving someone money as a gift. You can do a stamp scene. You could put someone's name there. You could put the rest of the sentiment. You could also use the panel to be your scene and then have your sentiment below as the panel pops up. So there are so many cool ways to use this design. You can also do a smaller stitch rectangle. It doesn't have to be so big. You can really play around with different sizes. The design ideas with this are really endless, and what I'm so excited about is to see what you guys are going to create with this, because it is going to be absolutely incredible. And now I wanted to take a chance to take a look at the 3 different cards that we made with the Pull and Pop pull tab and different ideas that we can do with it. So on the first card that we did, we used the Pull and Pop pull tab with a stamped and die cut image, which is so super cute. The Pull and Pop pull tab was a little bit lower on the card, and this time we didn't use the notch. On this card here, we use this big panel and we have this huge movement, and it's a totally different way to use the die and to have a fun surprise below. And then for the third card, we have a die cut image that's moving. Our panel is way higher up on the card, and we've used the notch here, the decorative notch for the pull tab. And I just think this looks so cool. By having the rainbow up towards the top of the card, it really packs a big punch when it moves up into the sky. And oh my goodness, is this die so much fun. And I have to show you some incredible cards by the design team. And first up, we have a beautiful card by Grace, and I love how that little mouse is floating up with the balloons and how she's shifted the Pull and Pop pull tab over to the side so that it fits with her design. This card by Marine is so incredible. When you pull that pull tab, the frog leaps into the air, and this is just so sweet. I love it so much. Here, Mindy is using our brand new embroidery hoop die, and as you pull the tab, you get the fun surprise of the other little mice at work sewing their dresses. Tammy shows us that the Pull and Pop pull tab is also perfect for slimline cards. How incredible is this as you see that little hot air balloon float into the sky? I just adore Elena's space scene. This Pull and Pop pull tab is so cute for outer space cards, and our astronaut is flying in the air with his special delivery. This card by Audrey is so sweet. I love her layers of clouds and stars and how her awesome balloon goes flying up into the air. Megan was inspired by rainbows and unicorns, and I love that when you pull that rainbow up, the unicorn flies up with it, and it is just so beautiful. Elise used the panel idea for a super cute Easter card, and as you pull the tab, the sentiment is revealed, which is just amazing. And then here is Callie's stunning card that inspired us to make ours today. I love how that rainbow pops up into the sky. And oh my goodness, we cannot wait to see what you guys create with the Pull and Pop pull tab, so make sure to share it with us. Thank you so much for watching today, and I hope you have an absolutely amazing day. Bye!